Hi, my name is Thayer Period, and here's how I remade the beat to Murder Music by Ken Carson and Destroy Lonely, originally produced by Rock on the Track. The first thing I remade was this bass pluck. I remade this in Serum, and here's how it sounds with no effects. Nothing super crazy going on here. So we start by taking two oscillators and both set them to the basic shapes waveform, and we are just using the saw wave. Then I added 5 voices of unison to the first one and 4 voices of unison to the second one. Also importantly, I pitched the second one down an extra octave, so it is playing a bit lower than the first one. Next thing I did was add a little bit of sync to both of them to just make them a little more high-pitched. I'll show you how it sounds as we turn the sync value up. Yeah, it just kind of changes the tone a bit. Next thing I did was make this shape with our volume envelope to make it a bit plucky. Then I just used that envelope one to control the cutoff of a low-pass filter just to make it even more plucky, with a decent amount of resonance and drive and fat just to make it very beefy. Final thing going on in our main section is we are actually using our envelope 2 to control the pitch of both of our oscillators. So essentially what's going on is there is a very quick pitch dive creating a kind of swoosh like. So if you watch this shape here, you'll see it actually correlates to up here. If I turn this decay up, you'll be able to notice it a lot more. But yeah, we have that pretty short, so it's a pretty quick pitch dive. Then for effects, I started by adding a soft clipper, just to beef it up a little bit, and then finishing it off with an EQ, cutting out our extra low end and high end that didn't need to be there. The next thing I remade was this growl bass. Again, I made this in Serum. Here's how it sounds with no effects. So we have a similar setup to our bass pluck. We just have 2 oscillators, both set to a saw wave, and our first one is pitched down an extra octave. We have 7 voices of unison on our first oscillator and 10 voices of unison on our second one, but we have the detune value turned down quite a bit, so it is not actually making it sound super wide. Next, we are using our envelope 1 to control the cutoff of a low-pass filter, just making it a bit plucky. But we have our resonance cranked up a bit to kind of give it a more vocal sound. We are also set to mono, so there is no overlapping notes. Then for effects, we are applying this sine fold distortion. As you can hear, it is making it quite growly, quite distorted, quite bleh. Then we are just running it through a multiband compressor, just to clean everything up. Then just a chorus for some additional width. Our mix is only on 18%. Then we finish that off with a pretty harsh EQ, cutting out our lows and highs just to make it a bit more mid-rangey and kind of get rid of extra stuff that didn't need to be there. The next thing I added was this lead. Again, I made this in Serum, and it is actually comprised of 3 different layers. All these are the same Serum preset, but just all playing different notes. Here's how that sounds with no effects. What we got going on here is we have a square wave for our first oscillator and a sine for our second oscillator. Our second oscillator is pitched up an octave with the level turned all the way down because we are using it to FM our first oscillator. Our envelope 1 is adding a little bit of a modulation for our FM amount, kind of just causing it to pulse forward a tiny bit when the sound starts. And it really gives it that harsh, shrieky sound. Here's how this sound sounds with no FM. And here's with FM. We also have 7 voices of unison on our main oscillator, with our detune turned down a bit, just to make it wide but not too wide. We are also set to mono, so our notes cannot overlap. Then for effects, we start by adding a tube distortion, just really cranking the hell out of it. Next, we run that through a multiband compressor to kind of clean everything up. Then we're boosting our low end and cutting out our extra highs, and finishing it off with a reverb. The next thing I added was this other synth. Again, made in Serum. Here's how it sounds with no effects. This one is actually very basic. We just have a saw wave with 6 voices of unison and our detune turned down quite a bit. We also have our envelope 1 in a shape like this, and we are set to mono legato and have our portamento turned on to around 5 milliseconds. So there's a little bit of a glide between our notes. Then for effects, we start by adding some soft clipping, then a phaser. That kind of gives it the main quality of the sound. Then we're just cutting out our lows and our highs with an EQ, and then finishing it off with a delay and a reverb. Next, we have this beep. Again, made in Serum. As you can tell, there's a lot going on in this song. We have 2 sine waves. Our second one is turned down all the way in its volume, and we are FMing our first one by our second one. creating a kind of electric piano type sound. Then we are just using our envelope 1 to control the volume of our sound and also the cutoff of another low pass filter, kind of giving it a more plucky shape again. Now most of the heavy lifting is in the effects. We start by adding a soft clipper, just to kind of bolster it a bit. Then we run it through a multi-band compressor, and then boost our highs and cut our low end. And finally, we just add a delay and a reverb. Next thing I added was the square bass. Again, shocker, made in Serum. And I know I said it was a square bass, but it's actually not square waves. Here's how it sounds with no effects. What we got going on is 2 sine waves, similar deal to our last sound. We have the second one turned down all the way, and then we're using it to FM our first oscillator. Then we're doing something very similar to the first bass pluck I talked about, where we are having our second oscillator control the pitch of both of our oscillators, causing them to very quickly dive, creating that punchy transient. For our voicing, we also have mono, legato, and portamento turned on. And then for effects, we start by adding a very heavy tube distortion. As you can tell, that makes the sound much beefier. Then we tame it down again with an EQ, cutting out our extra low and high end. And there you go. Now the final sound I synthesized was this sine. You can hardly even hear it. Here's how it is by itself. It's just a sine wave with the low end cut out. Now we add our 808s. I'm just using the Hacked My Instagram 808, very famous. But I am running it through a Camel Crusher on the Annihilate preset with the mix turned down to 16% just to kind of tame it down. Then I'm running it through a Sausage Fattener to beefen it up again. Then last but not least, I added the drums. Nothing super crazy, just this wavy hi-hat with the fade out turned way down. Then this anything clap and a chop snare. And that's it. If you want access to the Serum presets from this remake or any of my 170 plus other remakes or the project files or one-shots of the Serum presets, you can get access to all of that on my Patreon for a very reasonable price. Patreon.com/prodtherapy. I will throw a link up on screen right now. It's a great way to support me and get some new sounds for yourself if you are a music producer looking for that kind of thing. I hope this was entertaining and informative, and I will catch you next time. Peace!